Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawk fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers here to talk Seahawks football. Got a great show today. We are talking about the Off-The-Ball Linebackers as a position group. Keith's joining me as always. It's Saturday morning for us, and happy Saturday to you. Hope it's not too stressful. For me, I've got the house to myself for a few hours this morning. I've got some coffee going. Yeah, it's and that's about it until later this afternoon when I have something else planned. But
yeah, I've got a busy day planned of recording the show, drinking some coffee, sitting outside on the deck before the weather turns bad, and
contemplating your soon to be summer vacation.
Yes, very much.
Nice.
And then I've got stuff this afternoon and evening, but that's going to be the bulk of my day today. Is going to be, I've been working my ass off, and I need a day to just sit outside and read a book.
I am going to our niece's end of season dance competition performance, and she's, I don't want to get this wrong, 10. She's 10, and so I'm going to be watching a bunch of 10-year-olds this afternoon do all their kind of dance stuff. The good news is she's like a champion. She's amazing. So everything she signs up for, everything she does, she gets first place. Not just first place in her team or whatever, not first place in the city, first place in the state. So she's kind of a phenom, and she's kind of fun to watch. Yeah, so that's my deal. Hopefully I get some food out of it, maybe.
Food's good.
Food.
We can all use food.
I just want food.
Food's important.
I'm pretty easy. Okay, so comings and goings out of OTAs. So OTAs have been this last week, and there's been some players that have opted out. There's no real major red flags or any concerns at all. It's just the usual players, guys that have had some experience around the league for a while and just decide to take these things off. The only thing that I think of, though, is that, man, get in there. We've got a whole new scheme, a whole new program, new coaches, get familiar with everybody, yada, yada. But guys like DK Metcalf have earned the right to take it off, and I'm sure he'll pick it all up in due course. So what else are you hearing out there?
A lot of smoke that people are like, yay, everyone's excited, and ooh, we all really like the offense, and yeah, everyone looks good. I don't know. That's the book of the press meetings. That's what you get out of them. The only one that stood out to me was Geno Smith saying that the offense is so creative. There's plays he's never seen before.
Nice.
And I'm like, dude's been around this league for a while. He played for, some pretty creative systems in college. I have a hard time believing there's anything he hasn't seen before. So, but at the same time, just the fact that he said it, like it was there, and it made me laugh. So
that's funny. Yeah, I'm probably, I'm approaching being twice as old as Gino, and I've probably seen it all. I've probably seen every play that you can possibly draw up on a clipboard. Yeah, no, I agree. It's like, I really like the new coaching staff. It's a welcome, change of scenery. Looking forward to playing with everybody. I'm excited about my role in the offense. If you're Pharaoh Brown, he came out and said that it's a little bit more defined than it has been in the past for him, and so he kind of clearly knows what to expect this season. But what we're here for is to talk about the linebacker group. Now, this is not the edge rusher linebackers, outside linebackers. This is the off-the-ball linebackers, inside linebackers. We've got a fairly decent group, at least on paper, but there are some question marks. And it seems like we've had these sorts of question marks for the last 3 years, maybe 4. And you know, up until KJ Wright and Bobby Wagner were here together. Since they kind of split up, the whole thing's kind of now completely broken down and fallen apart and rebuilt. And it's a completely different situation this year. I mean, the guys that have experience in this in the past rosters are guys like John Radigan, Patrick O'Connell, who've been on the practice squad for a couple of seasons, but really no experience whatsoever. So everybody in this that's going to start and have significant snaps is going to be new to the team this year. Mm-hmm. Team went out and signed a pair of free agent signings. Keith, why don't you talk about those? What did you think of the free agent signings that we had before the draft?
So I kind of like them. The guys are, they're fast. They're maybe a little undersized compared to what we're used to, but they're quick. They're good in coverage. This is a team that needed to get faster in that area. And they did. They added some team speed and they added some tremendous coverage ability. I'm a little worried about their coming downhill and making plays at the line of scrimmage as opposed to 3 yards past. But that clearly wasn't what the team was looking for when they were signing guys. They were looking for speed and coverage. And that's what they went and got. I really like the Jerome Baker signing. He's 27. He's a guy that's got experience. He's been a starter. He looks like, the real deal. Tyrell Dodson, who's the other one, could be the better of the two, but he's dealing with some injury issues. And I think that, I'm not seeing that much concern about it from, the fans, but I'm concerned about it. I mean, the lower leg stuff that he's dealing with is the same
that
leg
would
as
be
his ACL.
Before we push record, I said it was Dodson I was concerned about. It's actually Baker.
So I have him backwards.
That has that.
Okay,
he's got the wrist thing that he kind of went out with. He had off-season surgery on his wrist, and then he's had an MCL sprain in the past that is kind of bothering him. Mike Macdonald mentioned a lower leg injury that he's dealing with, or he didn't say injury, but he just said a lower leg issue that he's dealing with, and he won't be available until training camp.
Okay.
So the guy that's the better of the two, Jerome Baker, at least in my opinion, is more expensive. They paid him more. Mm-hmm. He's also more athletic. He was drafted in the 3rd round out of I think it was Ohio State. 4.53 40, 22 and a half career sacks, 5 interceptions. He kind of does it all. Fills the stat sheet. He can drop back into coverage for you really well. He's the guy that the Seahawks are initially going to play on the weak side and allow him to kind of move all over the place, sideline to sideline, drop back into coverage, etc., depending on his health, And so there's already an asterisk on this one. And then Dodson, now you mentioned maybe he might be the better of the two. That could very well be.
He's younger. He's 25.
Right. But he spent his first 4 seasons with the Bills first 3 seasons with the Bills as a role player. He spent time on the active roster, but he only logged in his first 3 seasons 220 snaps, special teams, more or less.
That's a stacked roster. He had a hard time getting on the field.
Yeah. Well, in 2023, finally, a couple players in front of him got some injuries, and he was kind of pressed into service, and he completely blew everyone out of the water.
Yeah.
He had 61 combined tackles. This is on like 10 starts. 61 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, 2 pass defenses, and an overall player grade of 89.5 from Pro Football Focus. 82.6, run defense, pass rush, 73.7, coverage, 86.8. And that's 509 snaps. I mean, that's a small sample, but it's a big enough sample to where he earned an opportunity with the Seattle Seahawks to be their starting linebacker.
It's 2/3 of a season worth of snaps, and he looked really good doing it. But you're right; that's the sample size. It's that. But he's athletic. He's fast. That's why he was a special teams mainstay before he got a chance to play. He came out and did the things. I think this guy can be really good.
Yeah, I mean, he graded out as one of the best 3 linebackers in all of 2023, in Pro Football Focus, including Roquan Smith. So, and he had a 10.6% run stop win rate, which is top 10, 11 pressures, 2.5 sacks on 41 blitz opportunities. So he understands about the blitz. He understands the timing, disguises, all that kind of stuff. 26.8% pressure rate. And so that's a weapon. So a guy that's in that realm, that's kind of like Jamal Adams kind of realm as far as his effectiveness that first season with the Seahawks where he had 9.5 sacks. He had numbers like that.
Yeah, but the difference is that Dodson can cover. So,
right.
I mean, like I said, I think he has the potential to be the better of the two. I think it's all there. What we've seen though is a sample size. I had him backwards. I had thought that he was the one who was coming off the injury. So it's like, yeah, we've got the small sample size and some injury concerns, but when he's healthy, he could be really good. Well, that was the injury part backwards, but
that was why it was the double whammy for me, because here's a guy that we have penciled in as a starter, because who else? And we'll go through the roster here in a second, but who else is going to be a starter in this defense? So he's kind of penciled in there, but he's got 10 career starts, 15 over 4 years, but 10 last year with the bulk of them. So he's got 10 career starts, most, all those coming last year. And here he is. He signed up with, a pretty cost-effective contract, $4.2 million with a $1 million guarantee. And here he is. So that's one concern. And then Jerome Baker, I really like the signing. I mean, I thought, okay, this guy's super athletic. He's undersized at 232 pounds, but he's 6'2", super long, very fast, shifty, fills the stat sheet. I was like, that's a plug and play guy. I'm good with that. And then I just found out, like, I knew that he had kind of the wrist thing or whatever, and I didn't really think about it until just yesterday when Coach came out and said, yeah, he's going to be unavailable. He said, we probably won't see him until training camp. He's going to be fine, but we won't see him out in OTAs. In addition to off-season wrist surgery, Baker has lower body stuff he's working through. He had wrist surgery in the offseason and won't be available until training camp. So now I've got question marks on 2 of our starters.
Both of the starters, yeah.
Of the starters. And we drafted a guy in the 4th round who we probably drafted slightly early.
Yeah.
And that's our room. And then you add John Radigan, Patrick O'Connell, Drake Thomas, which I'm intrigued about actually. But John Radigan, Patrick O'Connell, we kind of know those players. We know what they're all about. I think John Radigan, after he had an ACL and at the tail end of his rookie season, he kind of came back, couldn't make it back in time to play the next season because he was injured in December. But last year he came back and was ready, and but he couldn't press anybody out of the starting lineup. Started the season on the practice squad, called up eventually, had a lot of special teams opportunities. Patrick O'Connell, same sort of a timeline for him, and that's it. And then we've got some undrafted guys.
O'Connell was an undrafted guy that came over. I actually kind of liked what I saw from him in the preseason, but it's preseason and it's against, it's the 4th quarter of games. So it's against guys that probably aren't going to make rosters. So it's really hard to judge, but I didn't like some of his game, but Yeah, he's had a hard time sticking on rosters and ends up on practice squads and yeah, I mean that's basically those two guys. They're there. They're neither of them is going to come in and wow you.
Yeah, they're back end of the roster kind of guys who are going to be either on a practice squad or going to be special teams guys for you.
I'm intrigued by Drake Thomas.
I am too. So here's the deal on Drake Thomas. Last year he went undrafted, ended up in the Raiders camp, made the went through camp with them, showed out really well in preseason, and they were going to try to keep him, and so, but they didn't have a roster spot for him, so they cut him, tried to put him on. Well, they did put him on the practice squad. He lasted there for like a week, and Seahawks picked him off. And then he spent the entire season on the roster with no snaps on the defense and some special team stuff. So really, we haven't even had a chance to see him yet.
Yeah, the Seahawks picked him off. They couldn't, once they put him on the roster, their choices was to leave him there, or if they were to try and move him back to the practice squad, the Raiders were going to take him. They were going to take him back because they wanted him. And so they left him on the roster. He got some special team stuff and that was it. But he also didn't have training camp or the off season or any of the stuff with the team. So he didn't really know the scheme, the defense, all the different stuff that the team was doing. So they weren't going to play him unless they had to. And they never felt like they had to, but I'm intrigued. I think that, there's a reason why the Raiders coaching staff didn't want to try and move him to the practice squad. They tried to create a spot for him, couldn't figure out how to make it work. So they ended up moving him to the practice squad, and then he got snagged, and then they wanted him back. So the Seahawks had to keep him on the active roster the whole season.
Yeah, so, when I say the guy had a great preseason, he had a great preseason. Like he really had he was their best linebacker. And the fans were just crazy about him. And when he was, picked off, they were pissed. And there's a reason for that, is that he's a good football player. Like his execution is not the issue. Physical player, likes contact, takes on blocks. He's instinctive. He reacts. He's got great vision. He can chase down plays, sideline to sideline kind of thing. Team captain. Angles, all that stuff, like checks all those boxes. The one thing he doesn't check is he's 5'11", 230, and he's on the shorter length wise, and his speed is average.
Yeah, he's average speed, but he's short and he doesn't have the long arms, which means he's gonna.
So blockers are able to stay on him.
Yeah. Without the length, he can't get off blocks quite as well. He doesn't have the ability to get up and deflect passes as well because, he's just, and he doesn't counteract all that.
He's essentially speed. Bobby Wagner without the experience. And today's Bobby Wagner. Like if Bobby Wagner was 34, 35 years old and Drake Thomas was 22, they would be the same in that Bobby Wagner's lost 2 or 3 steps. He's got, he doesn't chase. He can't work through traffic as well as he used to. But man, does he have the instincts? That's what gets Bobby still playing in the NFL. His instincts, his timing, his play recognition, all that stuff. Yeah. So this guy's got a little bit of that, where he's just really a good football player, understands execution, schemes, what offenses are trying to do against him, and he's just a good player. The question is, can he overcome the physical limitations that he was born with? And I don't know. I like guys like this, to be completely honest. I root for players like this because not everybody's going to be 6'4", 250 pounds. It's not the way it is. And there's still really good football players that are 5'11", 230. And so I would love to see him in preseason and just kind of figure him out, because if he can somehow supplant Radigan or Patrick O'Connell on the active roster, and you're looking at Dotson, Baker, Knight, and Thomas, maybe I feel pretty good about that.
We'll get to Knight here in a minute because he's kind of the big,
right,
sure. The big question. But the other one is Easton Gibbs, linebacker out of Wyoming, undrafted, brought in. Know anything about him? Because I could not find tape.
He's
of Wyoming.
The one thing that flashes red with him is his 30 3/8" arms. So he's again short stature, 6 foot, 232 pounds, a little on the light side. Ran a 4.73 40, right? A 1.59 split, which is pretty slow. A 31.5 vertical, which is not good, like a 20th percentile for a player of his size, and a 9.1 broad, which is about a foot shorter than you want. So he's not explosive. He's not fast. He's got short arms, but
he was really productive.
He was very productive. So here's another situation where production and film tell a different story than a guy's, physical makeup. And so like started 38 games, something like that, led the team in tackles for loss, sacks, pass breakups, forced fumbles during the time he was there. Just filled the stat sheet as a 3-year starter at Wyoming. And, there's a reason that a player like that at 6 foot, 232 with really short arms and a slow 40 end up at a place like Wyoming. But if you're a good football player, good things happen. So, he goes out for a tryout. Seahawks signed him. That's all I know. College production is a nice starting point for this kid, but he might not have the athleticism or skill level, needed to make the roster. And he's just a camp casualty. So for me, right now, that's kind of what he is. And maybe a practice squad candidate, depending on how he shows.
Mm-hmm.
And the kid I don't know anything about, but you might know something about is Devin Richardson,
yes.
the 6'2", 229-pound linebacker out of the Washington State Cougars.
Yeah, this is a signing that I actually kind of like. He doesn't have the size issues that the last two guys we've talked about come in. I thought he was a draftable player, and I'm a little surprised that that he didn't get picked up. When I say draftable player, I'm not expecting someone who's going to be taken early. I'm thinking like 6th or 7th round, but still, he's a guy that I kind of expected to be drafted. He's instinctual. He's quick. He made a lot of tackles.
It's up to see what we get.
He doesn't have the he doesn't have like the size, length issues that of the other guys. This is a guy that looks like an actual NFL linebacker.
And he has a frame to put a little bit more on.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the player that everyone wants to talk about. The tackle machine that is Tyrese Knight.
Yes.
The more you kind of spend time talking about this guy and looking at it and analyzing it and hearing about the good things that other people have to say about him, the more confident I am in his ability to kind of step in and have a role right away. Not game 10, but game 1, come out and do a few series and so forth and work in. And depending on Jerome Baker's status, I now get why after the draft, they started talking about him in terms of, we're going to start him out on the weak side as a weak side linebacker in our defense. And he has the ability to do more than that, but that's where he's going to start. That's where Jerome Baker plays. And Jerome Baker's got those injury things. So the team seems like it has a little bit of a plan, a backup plan, that maybe Dotson starts in the middle. Tyrese Knight potentially could be your starting linebacker first week 1, if Baker isn't ready to go.
Yeah. And that's a possibility. I'm less excited about this than I think you are. The team is talking him up. They really are. The coaches are very much talking him up. But I go back and I look at my notes for him in the draft and that kind of stuff. This is a guy that would have fit in really well with the old coaching staff. He comes downhill and makes plays.
They don't have anybody like him though on this roster. So
yeah, but I'm just saying he does those things really well. But what he doesn't do is cover. He's not good in coverage. And that was the case with Brooks and in these last couple of years, Wagner. Is there guys that come downhill, make a lot of plays at the line of scrimmage, but don't cover well?
I will say this about him. I'll give the kids a little bit of credit. Maybe you can counter. Kid's super athletic, like well-rounded, did cover in college. It's not like it's completely foreign to him. He does have the instincts. He does have the ability to athletically get into coverage. Now, whether or not he's good in coverage, that's a debate, and certainly probably you can expect the worst for a rookie season. But we've got a new coaching staff. We've got some teachers on that staff, maybe, and Mike Macdonald is the linebacker guru, right? And so and he kind of pounded the table for this kid. So I'm gonna wait and see mode probably on coverage anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with you. I'm concerned because his tape shows a lot of missteps in coverage and a lot of wasted steps and guys getting by him. But his tape is also, man, this guy gets downhill and attacks the line of scrimmage against the run. Doesn't miss a lot of tackles. Just racks up tackling stats.
And so when you have Dodson and Baker on the team, you like a guy that can tackle because Baker and Dodson are known to have missed tackle rates that are, in the middle of the NFL or slightly higher. And they're more of Jamal Adams' school of tackling, where they want to just hit you, not wrap you. And so to have Knight on the roster, a guy that wraps, and he's a solo tackle machine. Like he doesn't need an assist necessarily to bring somebody down. So it's nice to have a guy like that on the roster. It makes me actually feel better.
He's going to remind a lot of people of Brooks. Right? Got the athleticism, will rack up tremendous tackling stats. But
he looks super long too at 6'5". He's 6'5" and 233. So he's long, lean. Yep. Interesting body type for a linebacker.
He will remind a lot of people of Jordan Brooks. And that's a good and a bad thing, right? Brooks, I thought, was always underrated by the, Seahawks fan base. But at the same time, like, he was underrated because there were deficiencies that you could see. I didn't think people gave him credit for the things he did well. But there were deficiencies. And I think Tyrese Knight reminds me a lot of Jordan Brooks. So, but that's not, I mean, it was a 4th round pick. You got a guy that late who has the chance of coming in and doing the things that Jordan Brooks did. Brooks was a 1st round pick.
So I think you got to take a look at the upside on the athlete and the length and hope that he can do spot drop coverage stuff, because I think that the coaches would play into that. Like, hey, we got a guy that's 6'5" and it's got 81-inch wingspan. We're gonna take advantage of that. You may not, have the best drop back reaction skills, but you can recover just fine, and we're gonna take advantage of that. So I think that we'll be okay if everyone stays healthy. If we have health concerns, this could be a group that you end up getting a player that's not currently on the roster for week 1 to come in and kind of solidify the depth in this room, because it's unproven and it's injury prone.
This is, the, this room, this position is not without talent. There is talent here. There's reason to believe that they're going to be all right.
How do you rank it as a position group as far as talent on this team?
Other than the interior of the offensive line, it's the second worst position group of this on the team, on the roster.
Yeah, and maybe tight end. But yes, I mean, significantly, yes, inside linebacker is going to be the group that kind of stands out to me. But you're right, though. It does have talent. Like Dodson and Baker are legit. They can play.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll be okay, especially if Baker's fine. If he's, in camp and he's fine, then we're good. And then that allows Tyrese Knight to kind of come along, not have a role immediately, but work in. And that's a perfect situation for him. Both Baker and Dodson, I think, are 1-year deals. Yes,
They are.
And so, Knight just has to wait a year, essentially, to basically be penciled in as a starter. And so he's in a pretty good spot.
Yep. Baker is a 1-year deal because I think because of the wrist injury. Teams
he was a cap casualty too from the Dolphins. They saved like $9.8 million in cap by cutting him.
So I think teams weren't willing to dive in and give him another big contract because of the wrist.
Seattle paid him though. I mean, Seattle paid him $7 million.
It's a 1-year deal. That's the thing. Is okay. It's $7 million they're going to pay him, but they're not committing to him long term. Dodson, this is a prove it deal. This is a chance for him to come in.
Yes,
if he comes in, stays on the field, like doesn't get hurt and that kind of stuff, puts up the stats that like he did during the 10 games last year. If he continues to do those things all throughout this year, he's going to get paid. This has a Uchenna Nwasu feel to it as a signing. Because Nwasu
there's a lot of upside there, right? For an undrafted guy.
Yep. Nwasu was a seldom used guy who got a little bit of playing time here and there, but he's super athletic, and the Seahawks were like, all right, let's do it. And they paid him to come in because what little tape there was really nice. And he exploded once he got here and got a chance to be on the field. Dodson has very much that same feel. We'll see. I mean, he's only 25. And he's finished 4 years in the league at only 25. So,
and 15 starts, 15 starts, never been a full-time starter until he was pressed into service after Matt Milano, their starting linebacker at Buffalo, went down with an injury, came in and started the last 10 games and just exploded, just like Uchenna Nwasu did. I agree. I mean, total prove it contract.
If he comes in and balls out, he's gonna get paid next spring
by us or somebody. Yeah. The one thing that I feel okay. I mean, it's just a real tepid okay too about this group is that everyone in front of them is stellar. Like the defensive line for this defense is the best that I've seen us have since Legion of Boom days, when we had Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill and Macdonald in the middle and, a whole bunch of other role players that really did well.
And Red Bryant,
all those guys.
Clemens, everything.
You named all the rest I was thinking about. And this group could compete with that group, really. So it's and that helps the linebackers. So when Dodson and Jerome Baker aren't known for their tackling, maybe that's okay in this defense.
Mm-hmm.
They'd rather have them as drop back coverage guys and disguise guys. And, they're going to make plenty of tackles, but I think the days of seeing Bobby Wagner make 150 tackles in a season and Brooks, same, are over. I think these guys, top end, probably going to be 80 tackle guys. And a lot of those tackles are going to go to the safeties and outside or defensive ends and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, Brooks and Wagner it's always interesting when you look at like who in the league has the most tackles, and you see like Brooks 1 and Wagner 3. That was one year. Other years you had like Wagner 1 and Brooks 4.
Right.
And it's like, okay, who else on this team can tackle? Because so far it looks like only these two guys are making tackles. But you're right. I think you're going to see it spread out more. You're going to see, you're not going to see two guys each making 150 to 160 tackles. And that's even if everyone stays healthy. I just don't see it happening.
That's kind of the way the defense should operate. I mean, having Bobby Wagner and Brooks make all those tackles, that's great. Looks great for their stats. They make a Pro Bowl. It's not great for the team. It tells you there's some dysfunction.
It was how that defense was designed, because everyone, anything that went to the outside, the job was to push the guys back into the middle for the tackle to be made. And everything was about funneling running backs to Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks.
Yeah. And guys up front were not necessarily
they weren't getting off their blocks. They weren't getting off their blocks and making plays. Right. And, Jamal Adams was supposed to come up and help with that as, the extra guy in the box, but he was either hurt 99% of the time, and the 1% of the time he wasn't. He was being misused and being stuck as a deep safety.
His worst nightmare is coming up and stuffing a hole. I mean, that's if I was Jamal Adams, that would terrify me just based on my body type. It's like,
but that's
I'm one hit away from getting hurt.
But that's what he did really well when he
That's
was
what he does really well.
All-Pro.
It doesn't mean his body's built for it.
I know. But this is a 2-time All-Pro safety. Guy that was thought of when the Seahawks traded for him as the best strong safety in the league. Coming off an All-Pro season, and that's what he did. He was up, he was in the box, he was making plays against the run, and getting after quarterbacks, and
I would be excited to see a fully healthy, no injury concern whatsoever, Jamal Adams in this defense, because it would be kind of crazy fun.
But that doesn't exist anymore. He'll never be the fully healthy guy that he was.
No, that's true.
Before the years in Seattle, there's just too many injuries. They've taken too much of a toll on his body.
But Julian Love has a chance, and we'll talk about the safety group. I think I've got safeties next. We'll talk about the safety group next, because it's a fun, exciting group, and kind of highlighted by Julian Love in a kind of an expanded role that they talked about in a press conference the other day. Mm-hmm. And then Jenkins, who they picked up in free agency. I'm really kind of excited about that, and a whole bunch of other guys.
The story of Jenkins signing with Seattle is fun. We'll wait till our next show to tell that one. But yeah,
it's fun because he hurt somebody else, and that team is one of the teams that we don't like. So,
well, true.
All right, so let's wrap this thing up. It's a okay group. Like you said, it's probably the second worst position group on this team, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's devoid of talent or it's going to be an issue. It just means that this is the one that we have question marks on and we're worried a little bit about.
Yeah. And I think those worries are justified.
For the third or fourth year running.
True, but they're different worries this time.
I'm not as worried about it as well, because you got Mike Macdonald. Like, the guy knows what he's doing. Guys want to play for him. If something happens and Baker can't go or whatever, some other injury, I think Mike Macdonald's going to be on the recruiting trail and find a player that's going to be able to come in and fit in to this defense. So I'm slightly worried, but also it's going to take care of itself as time goes on.
Yeah. And, we just need to watch, watch the cut wire at the end of training camp, because if Drake Thomas isn't the guy that they can depend on, that Mike Macdonald feels that he can come in and fill in for Baker or one of those guys if an injury, then they won't hold on to him. They'll go get someone who that can. And
they may like John Radigan. I'm not going to discount John Radigan yet, but
well, true,
because he's hung around for this will be his 4th year. And when you hang around for 4 seasons and you're poking around in practice squad and back into the roster, you're just waiting for an opportunity. So, maybe the new scheme, new regime is the opportunity that John Radigan was looking for, and he may thrive. I'm not going to put it against him. I mean, he's an Army guy. He's a tough guy. He's a seasoned vet now.
There was a point a couple of years ago where I liked John Radigan, and I was really hoping he would get a chance to play. But then he was hurt and missed the year. And, at this point, we still have not seen him on the field much. So we'll see.
Yep. All right. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk, the show Seahawks Playbook podcast on your favorite podcast platform and our YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, and we will see you guys later. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.